From fleeing civil war in Syria to being jailed here in the United States for protesting Israel's genocide in Gaza, the story of Mahmoud Khalil reveals the fault lines of American democracy. This week on UpFront, I'll ask Khalil what his experience teaches us about how the U.S. treats those who dare to dissent. Mahmoud Khalil, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You were born in a Palestinian refugee camp in Damascus. You escaped Syria's repressive regime by fleeing in 2013 during the Civil War. You eventually made your way to the United States to attend graduate school. But while attending Columbia University to pursue a master's degree, you get arrested for protesting the genocide in Gaza. You spent 104 days in an immigration detention center. The irony of that's not lost on me. You managed to flee Syria, and you get arrested here in the so-called home of democracy. What does that say about the political climate here in the United States?
I mean, fleeing Syria, like fearing persecution for my political beliefs, and coming here where America sort of positioned itself as you said, democracy, the land of the free, and coming here to experience what a lot of my friends had experienced back in Syria under the Assad regime was shocking to me. And if it says anything, it says that we are already in an authoritarian regime here in the United States. That's what Trump administration wanted to give a message, because it was not about me as Mahmoud. It was about making an example out of me so other people, not necessarily immigrants, like even citizens, would fear the retaliation from the Trump administration if they do or say something that this administration does not like. And unfortunately, we're seeing it happening right now, where in fact Trump is employing every tactic, every agency to go after his opponents, or just people who say things that he doesn't necessarily like or his administration does not like.
Walk me through what happened on the day of your arrest, what you went through going through immigration or ICE detention. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was coming home after an iftar dinner. It was Ramadan, so I was coming home from my friend's house with my wife. And the moment we step into our apartment building, I see like someone following us. And then the moment we were inside the lobby, that person asked me who I am and telling me that I have to go with them. I asked him,
were they uniformed?
No, plain clothes. You can't, like, doesn't give you that they are police, because the first word he said, like, I'm police. I was like, which police? And then he said, like, Departments of Homeland Security. And despite my repeated requests to see a warrant, like, do they have a warrant to arrest me? They refused to show me that. They even were confused when I told them I am a green card holder, which again, like, at one point, like, it shocked me, but also it gave me assurances that maybe that there is some mishap, there is like a mistake.
Yeah, this can be fixed.
This exactly, like, and but when they were on the phone with someone and that person said, "Bring him anyways," without showing any warrant, that was like shocking to me, because that was very reminiscent of what happened to me, like what happened to people I know in Syria, how things go in oppressive regimes, and across the world. And then I was taken to Federal Plaza in New York to their hold cell, and then I hear them saying, like, the White House is requesting an update. So I was shocked, like, what's happening?
The White House. You're sitting. So at one moment you're at an iftar.
Exactly.
The next thing you know, you're in a prison
30
cell.
minutes after, like, they were booking me, the White House is requesting an update, and during all this time, they refused to give me a phone call, whether to my wife, to my lawyer, to anyone. So they made sure I'm like entirely blocked from contacting anyone. But I was mostly like worried about my wife. She was 8 months pregnant at that time. The last thing I heard was them threatening to arrest her. And then, they moved me around from one place to another, from New York to New Jersey, back to New York, to Texas, to Louisiana. So about 30 hours after, I find myself over 1,400 miles away from my home in rural Louisiana, in a place that I didn't know that it exists.
What were the conditions like? I mean, you were there for more than 3 months. We're talking about 104 days. What were the conditions like?
So I was mostly shackled, like between one location to another, except for the flight from New York to there. But the moment that you enter this facility, you know that you don't have any rights. The moment I stepped into Louisiana, I felt that I was stripped away from all my rights whatsoever. So inside the detention center, I was in a cell or a dorm of over 70 men, just bunk beds. And there's zero privacy. It was so cold back then. They give you very thin blanket, no pillow. The food was as close as could be to inedible. Like, you eat it just to survive. But what's more, I think, really difficult is the fact that you're surrounded by people who this administration is trying to portray as criminals, trying to dehumanize them just because they were born in a different country.
Earlier in our conversation, you said it wasn't about you as Mahmoud, it was about making an example out of you. Why you? What did you represent?
Because I represented a movement for justice, for dignity, for liberation, a movement that challenged the status quo in the United States, a movement that challenged also the establishment of this country, the political establishment, the Israel lobby in this country, and they wanted to make an example out of me. So, because Trump, during his campaign, he vowed to set the Palestinian movement in this country 20 years back. He said it like loud and clear, and he wanted to act on that because we were at the stage where the student movement and the Palestine liberation movement in this country was actually making progress, where more and more Americans are becoming aware of the U.S. complicity in the genocide in Gaza and the occupation of Palestine. And this change and shift really angered this administration, that they had to go after a student just to chill speech. And in some ways they succeeded in chilling speech across the country. We hear a lot about students, whether international or U.S. citizens, who wouldn't participate in protests just because they fear retaliation. Similarly, professors. And even, me, like, speaking up now, there's a huge risk because this administration is putting me under a microscope into everything I say. Like, the other week I said something, I find the DHS account on social media tweeting about it.
So Department of Homeland Security.
Yeah, exactly.
This is framing things as a national threat, as a threat to national
They're
security.
weaponizing safety and security to actually curb any freedom of speech in this country.
Has it almost worked? I mean, has there been a moment where you've said, hey, maybe for the good of my safety, the safety of my family, that I need to just be quiet for a bit?
Never, because I knew that their main goal out of targeting me is to silence me, is to make an example out of me, so others also would wouldn't speak up. And to me, the moral cost of staying silent is much, much more higher than any other risk. I can't remain silent at a time where you're witnessing your own people being massacred, starved to death, using your tuition fees, using your tax money, and I can't see that. Like, I can't remain silent. And I did the same when I was in Syria. It wasn't like only about Israel. In Syria, during like Assad regime oppression against Syrians, I also spoke up, and the risk was my death, my detention, torture, and I did the same, and now I'm doing the same when I'm witnessing other injustices against my people.
You mentioned tuition. Talk to me about Columbia University. What's been their role in all of this? Do you think that they betrayed you or the other students who were part of this movement?
Columbia University is complicit in the genocide in Gaza, complicit in the occupation and the apartheid.
How?
In so many ways. The first one, by investing in companies like Lockheed Martin, like Boeing, who are supplying Israel with all these weapons. This is the first one. The second one, they're also complicit by their academic ties with Tel Aviv University, a university whose students are researching for ways to kill Palestinians, more and more Palestinians.
What could Columbia University have done differently?
They could have done so many different things. Columbia University pushed a very dangerous narrative, an anti-Palestinian narrative and rhetoric across the campus. They failed to protect me and other students by, first emboldening those actors who were doxing and harassing us. There are many famous, stories about like a professor harassing students for their for their pro-Palestine views by not inviting violence into campus. Columbia University called the police on their students 5 times in about a year. And the last time Columbia University brought the police on campus was in the 60s to go after students opposing the Vietnam War and the segregation and the civil rights movement. Yeah. So you see this, how Columbia reacted by bringing violence into campus, by not actually listening to the students, because they feel that they know better, that they have the moral high ground. We know what's best for our students. So you have this board of trustees who are very well embedded in the establishment in the United States. Some of them are on the boards of companies that are investing in the war and in the genocide, and whose ideological interests align with this administration. That's why they were so happy to kneel and to pay the ransom to the administration. And then, Columbia offered $21 million to some of the students who doxed me, who contributed to my detention. So you see this double standards in this administration.
You mentioned the administration. In Washington, D.C. right now, we're witnessing what many describe as a military occupation being prosecuted by the administration, the Trump administration. You see the National Guard, Homeland Security, ICE, FBI forces all patrolling the streets. Across the city, we see hundreds of undocumented immigrants who have been reportedly arrested as part of what they're calling an emergency crime response. As someone who's been victimized by the state, how do you make sense of this kind of militarized enforcement?
It's one of the other tools of how this administration is weaponizing every tool at its disposal to project power, to project control, to terrorize the citizens, terrorize everyone. Because you want to give a message that if I do it here in D.C., I will do it in New York, I will do it in Chicago. And this is what's very dangerous about this administration, especially now with militarizing the country as a whole. We see now an increasing percentage of people, or increasing number of Americans who, because of the economic situation is bad, they are, they're going to the army, to ICE, to work for these law enforcement. So Trump wants to create the military system in this country, that more and more people would be depending on this militarized system. So it's so difficult to dismantle in 2 or 3 years. And their main goal is to go after everyone who does not look like Stephen Miller. Like, no one is safe. We see them in going to areas with low crime rates just to terrorize people.
Let's talk about what's going on in Palestine. In Gaza, Israel has now killed tens of thousands of people at least. We're talking about whole neighborhoods that have been flattened, and families are enduring a level 5 famine, which is the highest level on the global hunger scale. The U.S. continues to arm Israel, fund Israel, and give it diplomatic protection, shielding it from basically all accountability. How do you see Washington's role in all of this, in terms of not just enabling the violence, but in terms of the possibilities for Palestinian survival and ultimately Palestinian self-determination?
Yeah. We must be frank. The U.S. is not only supporting the genocide. The U.S. government is part of the genocide. They're actively, actually, part of this genocide. It's not about only, diplomatic cover. No, it's supplying weapons. It is, even for here, for this administration, is not enough for the Trump administration, or for the U.S. government, I would say, to support and arm Israel. But Trump is saying that even if you don't like what's happening to your people, you should be silent. You can't speak up. So it's in so many levels the U.S. is complicit, is part of this genocidal war against Palestinians, whether just recently, and it's bizarre to me that this administration would sanction 2 or 3 human rights organizations for seeking justice from the International Court of Justice or from the International Criminal Court. What do you want Palestinians to do? And this administration is very adamant about supporting Israel in helping them annex the West Bank, take Gaza as Rivera of the Middle East, as if Palestinians don't matter to the equation.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's an actual proposal circulating to turn Gaza into, as you talked about, this kind of tech and tourism playground under U.S. control. Donald Trump referred to it as a vision to make it, as you said, the Riviera of the Middle East. But there's a 38-page plan here. This isn't just a soundbite. This was an actual plan that pitches voluntary relocation programs. And while many people call it expulsion or ethnic cleansing, he's calling it an opportunity. As someone who's lived through detention and exile, how do you feel about a plan like this that talks about kind of mass displacement, even through the language of progress?
Yeah. I mean, it's another chapter of the Palestinian ethnic cleansing, of the Palestinian Nakba, that Palestinians want to stay in their lands. They've been fighting all these years, for 76 years, to remain in their land. But this is just a recycled version of the deal of the century that was presented by Kushner just 4 years ago, that failed. They want to give Palestinians these high-tech cantons, so that they only care about work, they only care about actually getting by, and don't care about their inalienable rights of self-determination, of freedom, of liberty, as anyone in this world deserve. It's not only about Palestinians.
What is your vision of Palestinian self-determination?
My vision of Palestinian self-determination is a democratic country for everyone, regardless of their background, regardless of their ethnicity, where they can live in peace and dignity and justice. My self-determination shouldn't come at the expense of other people's self-determination, as I would expect from others. Because, you know, Zionism, they say it is the right of the Jewish people for self-determination, but this self-determination is, to me, as a Palestinian, is death, dispossession, and destruction. It's as if someone's self-determination should come at the expense of my self-determination,
Right.
Which I absolutely refuse.
So you're talking about a single secular one state.
I mean, look, like, as long as people live in dignity, Palestinian refugees, they have the right to return. And they live in safe and security. I don't mind if it's a 10 state solution, you know. But what is more realistic is to have, as in any other country, a one democratic state where people vote for those who actually represent them for the best. That's it. Like, you don't have to create this multi-layered system as it is now in Israel-Palestine, where you have a Jewish supremacy based on the subjugation of Palestinians. That wouldn't work, whether you call it, like, you know, one state, two state, 10 states. It's not about that. It's about everyone should live in dignity and peace.
Your grandparents were forced from their home during the establishment of Israel in 1948. You've spoken about how your grandmother, pregnant at the time, had to walk 40 miles while fleeing and had to give birth under those conditions. Decades later, you're denied the chance to be with your wife as she gives birth to your child while you were spending time behind bars protesting Israel's genocide. When you reflect on those two experiences, how do you make sense of them?
Unfortunately, Palestinian struggle and trauma is generational, and it's cross generations as well. And it's cross borders. It's not only happening in Palestine. Violence against Palestinians transcends borders. It's happening to me here in the United States. That shows us, like, the immense of the Palestinian tragedy over these 76 years or 77 years now. And this pushed me more, like, to actually advocate for the rights of my people, because I don't want my son to live in similar circumstances. And on reflecting on these two, I've never thought about it, actually, like, now that you talk about it, like how my grandmother had to go through that, and now I have to go through pretty much like the same. But that shows, like, that my story is only like one drop in the sea of the Palestinian sorrow and struggle over these years.
When you were released, you said, "I will continue to protest with every one of you, not only if they threaten me with detention, even if they would kill me, I would still speak up for Palestine." It's a pretty courageous statement. Where do you get that kind of strength from?
I get it from the people of Palestine, the people in Gaza and the West Bank and across Palestine, who are facing immense oppression, who are at risk of death at any moment just for being Palestinian. You don't have to do anything wrong in Palestine to be targeted by Israel. Just being Palestinian, just the existence of being Palestinian would make you a target. And that's where I get my strength. I get my strength from from the father who refuses to leave his house and his hometown under constant settler terrorism in the West Bank. I get it from the kid in Gaza who, despite the genocide happening around her, she insists on reading and studying. That's where I get that strength, to be honest.
Thank you so much for joining me on UpFront.
Of course.
I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.